Welcome to everyone. Welcome also to the people that are following us from the theater inside of the Istituto Marangoni Metaverse. I don't know where they are. Hello. This is the first event of the Sentient Horizon series, the deep imaging. Tonight we're going to speak about the role of design inside of the virtual world and all the topics that we are touching in this last year, metaverse, NFT, all these things. We'll try to catch out in which way we can find an agreement between the role and the status of the designer and the company of design inside of these new worlds. We would like also to find out the way that the design can achieve an opportunity to have a change, because we think it's the time to change, the time to come down from the pedestal of the museum to become an active player of the future. And we would like to do together with our students, with the professional, with the institution, with the companies. And we organize like a gift for the city of Milan and for all the world of design, this series of events to start to debate all together about this topic. What can do design today to change and to achieve like the new opportunity coming from the emerging technology, the space travel, the robotics, like I said before, like all the digital worlds. So this is the questions that we want to ask to our guests today, and also in the next two events, that in May we're going to have the space proximity, and in June another event that is about the noetic design. But before to give the stage to our guest, I would like to say thanks to Marco Sammicheli and the Triennale to hosting us here today. I want to say thank to them because this is for us is the temple of design, and for us is an honor to be here like an institution. I want to say thanks to Barbara Toscano, our director of the school, that give us this opportunity to organize these big events. I want to say thanks to all the staff of Marangoni because they collaborate with us in the last 8 months to organize this series of events. I want to say a special thanks to Stefano Caggiano that he collaborated with me to organize this series of events. And the last one, but that is not the least, I want to say thanks to the ASI, the association, the Special Association Italian Association, because I decided to patronize these 3 series of events here in Triennale and to organize with us this beautiful opportunity to face the design and the new technologies to think about the future. So now I would like to let the stage to Laura Traldi, that is going to be the mentor.
Ciao a tutti.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you to everyone. Enjoy.
Do I have to speak with this? No, I'm microfonata. Okay. Okay, good evening to all. Thanks for joining us. I'm really thrilled. It's a very exciting evening, and because the topic that we're going to talk about tonight is extremely exciting and extremely important. Basically, we're going to talk about digital spaces, worlds that are created that may look like physical worlds, but they are maybe done digitally, and worlds in which everybody who deals with design needs to confront themselves with. Basically, the purpose of tonight is not so much to, well, first of all, to understand what's going on with digital spaces, firstly. Secondly, to try to imagine what digital spaces could be like in the future. So when we talk about digital spaces, I just want to point out what we're talking about. First of all, obviously, the metaverse. Everybody's talking about the metaverse. Some people say it exists. Some people say it doesn't exist and never will. Some people say it's been existing for 30 years or more. We also will talk about the spaces that we create when we play and we fool around sometimes with AI generative tools. I'm sure that all of you have played with ChatGPT or with Midjourney or with DALL-E. all the situations that we create when we use these tools are digital worlds. They may not be like the metaverse, which is supposed to be a place where we will actually be having experiences, but those are digital spaces too, because we interact in those spaces with other people, we can co-create, and we especially interface ourselves with artificial intelligence, which is a force that we all have to deal with somehow. So I'm sure that each one of you here has an opinion about what AI is, what the metaverse is. Some of you are probably extremely excited and thrilled about it. Some of you are extremely scared because we don't know what's going on. Okay, when we see machines doing things that are creative, we realize that some jobs may be at risk. But then sometimes some people even think that AI will be controlling us, when in fact AI is done through algorithms that people have to design. So design is a key word in this. And as designers, you will have to maybe not have an opinion yet about these things, but certainly be informed about what's going on. So what's the best way to do that than to talk about it with professional people who work in this area all of the time? So I'm going to introduce you now to our guests. First of all, who joined us from far away sometimes. So Federica Cascia, she has a very long job title. So I'm going to read her job title because it's very long. She's basically head of brand strategy, Horizon Worlds, and Avatar Meta Reality Labs. So she works for Meta in California. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Then we have Luca Morena. Luca is the CEO of Next Atlas. Next Atlas is a startup that uses AI to grab data from the world and to analyze it, and to give this information to companies who want to use this data to strategize their visions, let's say. And then we have Arturo Tedeschi. I have to have a little in bracket here because Arturo has very kindly joined us because Andres Reisinger, who was supposed to be here tonight, he's had a problem with regards to flights. So unfortunately, he couldn't be with us, and we only knew not at the last minute, but almost. And Arturo is a good friend of mine. I appreciate his work very, very much. He's a computational designer, an architect. He's worked with Zadig, with Roslov Grove, and with many brands. He will talk about it in a minute. And I love what Arturo does because he works with very complicated things, but he explains to them very, very clearly. So I'm sure that tonight he will be, and he's a designer, so like Andres was. So I just want to finish my intro before I give you the word, because they're going to describe themselves what they do. I just wanted to say what the purpose is tonight, and it's threefold. So first of all, we would like to figure out what could happen if the technology world and the design world joined forces. So if you all remember what happened when Olivetti called Ettore Sozzas, and when Steve Jobs called Jonathan Ive, well, wonderful things happened, beautiful products. We started to think about technology in a very different way than before. So what could happen if now the big tech or the people who are building the metaverse or these digital tools join forces with the design culture that we know about, especially we talk about the Italian design culture. And another point that is very important is to define, we will try to do that with our guests, to define what is a human experience when it comes to technology. Because, 15, 20 years ago, if somebody had told us that we would have to hold a phone to do everything, we wouldn't have thought that it was a very natural experience, but now we do it. And our kids, there's a position that is called the hunchback of the nerd, which is very cool. A lot of models now walk like that because it's cool to be a nerd. So why? Because we're used to looking at our phones. So our phones is like a part of our body now. So is that a natural interaction with technology, yes or no? And also we'll try to answer the big questions, which is what will happen to the physical world when AI will be very pervasive, and what will happen to us. So these are the big questions. Now I leave the floor to our guest to explain in 30 seconds what they do. So Luca, do you want to start?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me. So I'm Luca Morena. I'm the founder of Next Atlas. I'm a philosopher turned entrepreneur, so this is kind of weird, but then a lot of philosophical things will come up in this discussion, so I hope you will appreciate that. So in Next Atlas, we are basically helping brands to figure out the future. We do this by looking into social data and analyze this data with algorithms. So we actually use AI methodology to do what is called the old-fashioned trend forecasting. So that's what we do.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm Federica Cascia. I'm the head of brand strategy for Horizon Worlds and Avatars at Meta Reality Labs out of California. So we are talking about digital spaces, virtual worlds, and our identity in virtual space in the form of avatars. I'm sure you all know Meta, formerly known as Facebook. In October 2021, Facebook rebranded the company to Meta. In reality, that was not only a rebrand, but it was a manifestation of a kind of a pivot in the strategic vision of the company. So the company is transforming itself from a social media company. We all know and probably use Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and Messenger, and the company is moving versus the metaverse. It's a North Star, it's a journey. We are not yet there, of course. Even during the announcement was meant to represent really a public pivot and representing the North Star. And my job as a brand strategist is really to focus and try to understand the why, the how, and the what about the social platform, the new social platform in the metaverse.
Arturo.
My name is Arturo Tedeschi. I'm an architect and a computational designer. As I always say, it's very difficult to me to explain to my mother what I do in life. My work is something in between traditional design and science, if you like. I started my career as a 1.0 architect using pencil and paper, and then I fell in love with algorithms 20 years ago, and then I started using them in every activity of my life, from managing tasks in designing objects, architecture, managing the complexity of contemporary design. I also have an activity as an independent researcher, and I wrote a book called AAD, which is incredibly one of the reference books on algorithm-aided design. And in these very days, I'm actually exploring all the possibilities of artificial intelligence and mainly text-to-image generator in order to understand how we can use them in order to enhance the human being creativity.
Yes, that actually is the topic of tonight, so it's very spot on. I think let's start to frame the context, Fede. Let's start to talk about why do we need a metaverse and what can we actually do in it?
Yes. And probably the best way to reply to that is really to step back for a moment, just for a second, to understand where we are with the metaverse. Because there was a hype, of course, especially when Facebook rebranded the company, there was a spike. If you go back and search on Google Trends the metaverse as a word, you can see really a spike in October 2021, which was the moment of the rebranding of Facebook. Facebook did not invent the term, did not invent anything, but for sure it was a pivotal moment in terms of awareness. What is important to understand is where we are. We are so at the beginning of the journey that there is not even a common definition of the term. So there are multiple definitions. Experts, companies, different people in the field, they tend to have not to have an agreement on the final definition of the metaverse, nor the timing of the full manifestation of the metaverse. So there are it's not a matter of confusion, it's just to really help understand that we are at the beginning. So there are some that believe that the metaverse, an early manifestation of the metaverse is already here, but there are other people that say that the full manifestation or even a better manifestation of what we have right now will happen in 5, 10, 15 years. Some of the technologies are not yet ready. That's almost one of the key considerations. And also, usually it's good to explain what the metaverse is not, because also it helps framing the conversation. For sure, the metaverse is not only VR, because the metaverse will be, we will be able to access the metaverse thanks to different, let's say, devices, not just VR. It's not just an immersive experience that we can do with VR, and it is not only gaming. So back to your question, what we will do, essentially. There are already an early manifestation of use cases, so for sure gaming is one, but for sure we will be able to increase the quality of our presence online. I'm here now physically, I live in California. Maybe in 5 years from now, we can do something like that by having me as an hologram. I'm not sure if it will be in 5 years, probably in 10, who knows. But the quality of the presence will be enhanced. We will have an immersive experience and a series of new use cases that will be created.
I asked the questions, but not everybody can jump in. Luca, when we heard about the exponential, by the way, can we say that the metaverse is a 3D version of the internet?
It's the evolution of it's the evolution. If we go back, there was again, I really love the perspective in that sense. So we all remember kind of the telephone line, and then we moved in terms of the evolution of the communication into computers that are home computers, and then we moved and we started having the computers in our pockets. That's a kind of the fourth evolution, if we consider the evolution of communications.
Okay, Luca.
I totally agree. So I think that one of the most profound questions that we can ask about the metaverse right now is why we need that. So the point is that, okay, we get that we need some immersive space because we were like bored to do Zoom calls during the pandemic. You know that this kind of social interaction without presence is not really ideal. But I think now I'm putting my philosophical hat on, so sorry about that. But there might be some interesting connection between humanity, being human, and the metaverse, in the sense that we are actually animals that have this kind of capacity to imagine. So there's a profound link between the metaverse and imagination. So if you think about how we learn, how we explore the world, how we imagine situations. So this is also, we invented, for instance, fiction, literature. We invented the arts to do that. So we want to experience different modes of lives, different ways of being, other ways of living. And I think that metaverse is kind of, if you look at this in this way, so which is not really just gimmicky stuff, the nice avatar or what, it's really a space in which you can imagine things and make them more real. And by the way, the most interesting philosophical question here is virtual reality, or let's say the full-scale metaverse, genuine reality? I think that these are most of the questions that you will have, but we will be happy there. So, and I think this is actually an interesting point that we apart from, let's say, all the design, the technology that have to be figured out, because Federica is super correct. So there's no way that we now can simulate a perfect human being into the metaverse. So this is why it's so cartoonish, and you have things that are very. I don't know if I can mention that, but I was in the very first metaverse conference here in Milan, I think last year, it was a couple of years ago, there was a design studio, very good design studio, and they invited this guy who was the inventor of a virtual world, and he presented himself from the virtual world. And the problem with that is that it was super nice and interesting, of course, because he was talking about this incredibly sophisticated, futuristic design, was that all the interface there looked extremely old-fashioned. So he took like an iPad in the virtual world, but it was designed with an interface that we didn't have even in the 90s, because big buttons there. And so, but this is not because they are, they don't have taste in designing stuff in the metaverse. It's because you cannot really simulate very complex things in the metaverse right now. So, so the context is very complicated from many points of view. I think that we're going to discuss.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, how, talking about this complexity of the tools, how do you, in your experience of making things with algorithm, how do you try to erase the friction between people and technology? How do people experience these things that you do?
But first of all, Luca said something very interesting, that somehow we have, as human beings, this idea to mimic reality in the digital world. That's the first thing that we all do. For example, years ago, there was this kind of wave about using virtual reality to create objects. And then we use so many in the design world, we use different tools to create furniture or interior. But the experience was so frustrating because we are still, let me use the word, monkeys inside this kind of virtual tool, because we are still using, tools using with our hands. So the most important things are, we need a kind of upscales of this digital environment using a kind of probably a direct link with our imagination and what we can create with these new tools. You were mentioning, for example, AI or algorithms. Somehow they are a kind of platform to enhance creativity. Nowadays, we have the opportunity to use natural language to describe things without using our hands anymore. I guess that this is really one of the most important turning points in the history of creativity, or of course in the history of the computer, because for the first time we are creating and experiencing a new way to interact with the machine. In this precise moment, I can use my phone while we are here, and I can create something without using the computer, without using the mouse, without experiencing, again, this kind of monkey attitude to create objects. For the first time, we are, creators that imagine everything in real time, every moment, in every seconds. If I say, please imagine a white rabbit on a table, you can imagine in your brain. And I guess that we are moving toward this experience. In order to answer your question, there is always a kind of parabola. There is a rejection. Sometimes after that, we have an excitement for tools. And then everything is absorbed in our, sometimes daily routine. There is a sentence by Marshall McLuhan that says, we first shape our tools and therefore they shape us. So, there is a rejection at the first time, and then we absorb the tools, and then we evolve into something new. The most important thing is that, as Fede said, basically we are still trying to invent this new space.
Do you think because the tools, the AI tools that we're talking about, they are very natural? So I talk to ChatGPT and I get something, I put a picture in. Do you think that using this sort of, how could this be integrated to make the metaverse, for example, Fede? Or is this a vision that doesn't make any sense?
No, absolutely. There are a series of tools that can enhance and really support the fabric of the metaverse. So really, we are in a moment in which there is a lot of experimentation, and we are building kind of the tech stack and all the elements in support of the creation of the metaverse. And tools like generative AI can represent an accelerator and a support to the human being that are building the metaverse. So it's absolutely relevant.
So who will let's say the design community, somebody who designs things using these tools, be able to contribute to this, do you reckon?
Absolutely, because another important element is that everybody in a broader kind of sense will have an active role in building the metaverse.
What do you mean?
I mean that it's not something that will be developed only by big corporation. You know, I represent one of them, but not the only one working on the metaverse. If we think of Microsoft, for example, but all the big tech somehow working on the metaverse. But there are also other players, such as creators, such as developers, such as brands that are contributing as well. So it's really a rich community, and the idea is really to co-create, because there are a lot of questions. You know, you mentioned the philosophical questions. There are a lot of. I like a lot the concept of dilemmas. Most of the time, questions have an assumption of almost right or wrong, and in some cases we are in front of dilemmas in which it's less clear, the path is less black and white, and it's really when and where we can really be mindful of implications and try to really consider a broader spectrum of implications, responsibilities. And this is something that if we learn something from, you know, the past evolution of the internet, as humanity, we should really be able to step in as an integrated community, not easy to do,
no.
To really shape the future. That's one of the challenges.
Let's imagine this integrated community, what is going to be looking like. I mean, seriously, it's very hard, right?
Absolutely.
I don't know.
Yeah, it is, because of course there are, so you know that the buzzword lately has been that of interoperability, which means it's about everything that is technological. It's not just about the metaverse. It's in the IoT. Actually, in the IoT space, they agreed on a format recently. So it's you know, it's progress. And of course the metaverse, if there won't be just one, so there will be many. And probably you know, we would need like two different workflows. So one is more into the building the infrastructure of that, and more about building, let's say, the social, anthropological, society part of it. The things are related because technological infrastructure is always social and political. So if you decide to design things in a certain way, then you will have certain behaviors. But still, you know, the things should be at the same pace. So what we have to learn from the past is that this hasn't happened with social media, for instance. So we had rules well after we had social media fully developed, and this happens all the time because institutions are very slow in reacting. So I think that the problem for our societies in terms of having a relation with, this way of building stuff very fast. So in the last couple of weeks, just to make an example, the world literally changed. I know that he said we are at a turning point. I know that most of you are not maybe interested in technology, and we are geeks, and we are always looking into this news. But really, I can assure you that we are actually experiencing some kind of future shock. I don't know if you know the book by Alvin Toffler. So the future shock is when you experience a lot of change in a very compressed and short time. And so with the generative AI is happening this. So for instance, people are building stuff on top of a technology that has been launched 3 weeks ago, okay? And now the technology is improved, but not just by a margin, but a lot. So we're talking GPT-4 a couple of days ago, and now it's doing what GPT 3.5 Turbo is not doing. And there's a meme on the internet right now, which is, wanna feel old? So ChatGPT was launched 4 weeks ago. It's 5 weeks ago, I don't remember. And then DALL-E seems super old, super vintage right now. It was mid-
April 2022.
And so the problem is that this velocity and acceleration, we have to find a way to manage that from the society point of view, and also in education, for instance, because again, what I was teaching yesterday now is completely outdated because of the,
I understand. So what should, for example, designers try to learn about this? Because as you say, it goes so fast. Institutions cannot cope, schools cannot cope, no one can cope. You've written a book that people are still reading about when they talk about it. So how can we deal with that?
Well, people, when I wrote the first book 10 years ago, and then they are always asking when you will write the second one and the third one. And I said, I won't write a book anymore because it's not possible, as Luca said, to cope with the velocity. So, I mean, it's important to create a framework of flexibility in our mind, more than just, fueling our brain with knowledge. I mean, we should be very, very flexible and trying to understand the main direction we are going toward, rather than just, of course, we have to keep up. We have to keep up with the last tool, with the most recent technologies, but it's more important to understand where we are going toward. In terms of design, for example, someone is talking about the end of designers, the end of architects, because, the machine is already able to pass the Turing test, There are AI that are winning, context about photography, architecture, or other creative, environment. So it's important to say that probably the new technologies, I guess, won't kill our, our generation or human beings, but it will be very important to partner with all these new technologies, and this is very tough. It's very tough because, we have a bias, which is about probably 20 years of work or our education. So it's the most important thing that we have to do nowadays is changing our mental framework and trying to embrace the change. And I know it's very difficult. I found very difficult, and this is also a conversation that we had about how to speak also, not only with students, but also with companies, maybe with brands, with architecture offices in general, people that they shape our real physical environment, for example. And the change is very slow when you are dealing with big institutions, big players. But it's important mainly for them to accelerate this absorption in order to...
Today you were talking to a company, for example, You told me earlier, we don't need to mention it, but how can a company cope with this kind of change, and how should a company tackle this kind of change?
First of all, with engagement. The most important thing is play with the new things. It's not only, criticizing or just, reading the last YouTube video or information you can read online. It's important to play with stuff in order to understand how can you, I don't know how to say, leverage the new technologies or methodologies. So for example, with companies, the most important thing is try that. Try this new thing and try to understand if you can use it like this. And of course, technologies now they are speeding up in an unprecedented way. So that's why it's important to start as soon as possible.
What could happen to a company that doesn't use AI to, for example, strategize what they have to do? I'm not asking you to promote what you do, but actually I'm curious about it.
They should come to us.
No, that's not allowed.
But no, of course. I think that there will be, so this is not just about strategy, but I think that the future will be, there will be a divide between people who are using AI for what they do, and they are basically rejecting AI for, let's say, positioning purposes. My forecast here will be that there will be a lot of, let's say, so as you have made in Italy, you will have made by humans and made by AI, and you will have things that are basically declared as made by humans, like having the craftsmanship inside. So this will position this thing as a luxury thing, and mostly made by AI will be for the mass market. But this is also natural because if you think that there are plenty of design tasks that are trivial, designing a pattern on a t-shirt. Do you want to do that in your career? Maybe yes, for the exercise, but then maybe you get some nice algorithms doing that, or DALL-E or whatever. And so this can be interesting and scary at the same time, because if you look at the larger picture, you might have restaurants with robots and restaurants with humans, and as you have like fine dining with humans, and then you have, let's say, fast food chain completely automated. We are almost there. So if you go in a McDonald's right now, you just have an interface there. And then if you go, to eat at Bottura restaurant, then you will have a story. I had the privilege to eat, dinner with him. So and it's less about the food. It's mostly about the human experience and the story.
No, once during COVID, I remember having this thought, which really scared me. I think in the future, it would be a luxury to live in the physical world, and everything that's, like, say, very popular or that will happen in a digital way. Is that what the metaverse could be? Like the place where everybody has access, but the real quality, the real luxury will be to actually be with other people. I think it's a dystopia.
Who knows in a certain way, but a couple of considerations. I think that we tend to think in terms of two different ways, real life or digital life, and probably we should think more about convergence of the two worlds. And the idea is really to have, of course, ideally the best out of the two, but it's not the physical presence against the digital presence. This is not a challenge, but it's more an integration, because there are moments in which, and there are situations in which the physical presence is not possible, or it's not viable from an economically, for example. So, I more envision, based on readings and also a lot of conversations, kind of more of an integration in which we are part, we are a part of something that is more immersive, more organic, more natural. Because also we have to understand that what we consider now normal, it was not normal just 10 or 15 years ago. The iPhone turned 16 years old in January this year. I remember that I used to have, I had the first one and a lot of following, but the first iPhone was nothing compared to what we have right now. And also, it was a pivotal moment because it didn't have, it had a touch screen versus more of a BlackBerry or whatever, which was the standard. Now we consider that normal. I still remember it was 2009, having people coming to my desk just to do this kind of gesture because they were able to really pitch the images and to really zoom the image. So we tend to laugh if we go back. I can mention also, try to look at online on YouTube. There is an interesting interview made by David Letterman to Bill Gates, and it is 1995, and there is this kind of interaction about internet. Now, you started with a question, why we need a metaverse? And if you try to go back and watch that interview, at that time, the question was, why do we need the internet? And it's a kind of fun right now, more than 20 years after that interview. So it's also, and back to one of the comments, I think that there are, in my mind, two kind of big keywords that we really, what can we do, what companies can do. Behind every companies, there is always a human being, essentially. So we all, as human beings, we do have the opportunity to educate ourselves as much as possible. You mentioned engagement. It's a one form of education. I will even enhance the concept of engagement to really be focused on educating ourselves and educating ourselves with an open-minded. Because if we are biased, most of what we believe we know about the metaverse, about a lot of things, are coming from something that we saw in a movie, we read on a book, something that can be biased, is one manifestation. But because we are so at the beginning of the metaverse, we do have the ability to shape it. We do have the ability to really be proactive in addressing potential risks, in addressing dilemmas that we have. So the educational component, what can we do? Educate ourselves, read critically, really study, because that's the right moment, and everybody can do that, because now we do have access to a lot of information. Eventually, we do have too much information, that's the other risk, and being open-minded, and try to really overcome a bias, recognize the bias.
Okay, there's one big difficulty about this. It happened to me, actually, when we talked about it, and we talked last week, and you were mentioning that within 6 months we will have amazing music that will be made by AI. And it happened to me a few weeks ago. I was scrolling through Instagram, and a friend of mine, a photographer, posted this beautiful picture. And I was like, oh, that's a really nice photo, because he's a professional photographer. Then I read in the caption it was made with Midjourney, and I was like, oh my God. And I really felt ripped off. And then I wonder, why do I feel ripped off? You know, I mean, it's beautiful anyway. So but then it was a real effort for me to think that it wasn't a rip-off. So how do we get rid of this? Why are we so scared? And why do we consider so badly stuff that is made by a machine, even if it's beautiful?
This is very primitive as a reaction, not in the sense, in
No,
the
of
negative
course.
sense.
No, it is. Yeah.
It is in the sense that we are humans.
Human, yeah. Thank you.
But yeah, there are two things here. So, of course, it's probably the same reaction you would have if someone, you know, just told you, like, your life is an entire, fiction, an entire lie. And it's basically the Matrix in a sense. When Neo knows from, Lawrence Fishburne, I don't know, he has this reaction. No, I cannot believe it. No, it is not real. And this is something, it's very human, but note that we are transitioning from a decade in which all the content that we are seeing on the internet, the TikToks, the stories, the reels, whatever, are so-called UGC, user-generated content, and we are moving to an age in which we have AIGC. So, well, the content is generated from AI, and there's already plenty of that. So I was speaking with Arturo before. There's a fantastic community I think on Instagram that tags, or maybe TikTok, the images as mid-journey architecture. There are like thousands and thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands. And of course, if you are on Twitter, for instance, when ChatGPT launched, there were plenty of screenshots of things written by ChatGPT. Probably most of the things that you're reading now on LinkedIn and other places are made by an AI, supervised by a human. And so we need to get used to the idea of having emotional reactions to AI-generated content, which sounds, let's say, dystopian, but I think then it will be, the new normal, and it's basically, the human evolution in creativity. So this is really important, and I have another anecdote, and then I leave it to that. There was a school in US that has sent this message of condolence for, I think it was like the gunshot in some other school in Michigan. And it was like a nice message, very heartfelt. The problem was that there was written then in the end made with ChatGPT or made by GPT-3. So how do you react? So why it's not good? So it's because we think that there's no emotion behind a text written by a machine. Why we have this kind of superstition? Why we think that human written things are imbued with meanings, and if we use a technology, it's not. So this is actually a question for you. It's not. You don't have the answer, but
What's your answer?
Especially,
sorry.
no, especially because sometimes there are, it's not necessarily that human every time can do better. Because, there are situations in which, okay, we tend to be skeptical because the text is eventually made with an artificial an artificial intelligence. But in some cases, there are, in this case, text or sentences that can be written by any human being that are absolutely tone deaf or not absolutely in line. So we need to pay attention. I'm not saying I'm not in favor or against anything, and this is back to being really open-minded.
If I can comment on that, think about the reverse case in which I'm so emotional and I cannot write anything,
Yes.
and I have like the white blank page
Yes.
problem, and so there, these are the things in which you have to change the vision and the perspective and see this will help me, and so we will need to get used to that because writing a text right now is joy. It's pure joy. You're just doing art is pure joy.
Yeah. And I want to add something, a joke first of all. I guess from a designer perspective, designers in general, they have some kind of masochism. So if something doesn't have blood, I mean, it's like not acceptable. But if we create a design or just an idea in a few seconds and we have more time for ourselves, more time for hang out, I know this is a joke, of course, maybe it's the right way to do things. And also, at this precise moment, using AI, you cannot achieve anything that you cannot do by your hands, using your hands. I mean, the design created through AI is directly connected with the style, with the ability, with the attitude of the person is doing that. It's not automatically generated, because this is the most important, people are scared about that. But first of all, you have to turn on the computer. You need to put your text with your sensibility. And there is also another important thing. Probably we are moving from this kind of technical jargon when you are using computer to the so-called layman language, I guess. Something natural, which is super, super important, and it's a great change. I mean, this is also a way to humanize the way we use the computer.
You said, the designers like to spill blood, like they have to suffer.
Of course, yeah, you have to suffer.
But maybe I think there's a lot of truth in this, and it's not just designers, it's everyone. Because we feel as humans that unless, also, and when I buy something that is being handmade and it took many hours, a lot of companies, they say it takes so long to do it. That's why it's so beautiful, and it's true. So, but is it really true that when we use AI tools, we don't need to put any efforts in them? Because I think you need quite a lot of skills for using those as well, or not?
I guess that you don't need and you won't need technical skills, anymore. You don't have to, learn how to model using mathematical references or paradigms. I mean, you need to develop a jargon, which is natural, in order to describe things. And so you need more design culture. You need to understand the framework again. You need to have a more comprehensive understanding of what you are doing. And so this is a paradox, but basically you have more time to think about the logic behind your project. You have more time to do reviews. You have more time to output different alternatives in order to make better decisions. Now we are spending, and I guess my perspective is the one of a designer with hands-on, It's about spending a lot of time in creating models sometimes. And then after 2-3 years or days or weeks, sometimes you really forget about the direction. You really forget about what's the big picture is. So with AI, you can directly focus on the idea. And so it's a great benefit from my point of view.
Because I think the biggest reason why everybody is so skeptical, or those who are skeptical about these things, is we were not so skeptical when computers and robots replaced workers in factories, But But now that they're touching our jobs, then, you know, it's a bit different because we think, oh, because they're intellectual jobs, but actually, you know, what's the big deal? It's the same, right?
Yeah, no, I think that there's some kind of bias there because, it might be a bold claim, but we are actually attributing some kind of significance to many intellectual tasks that might not be so significant after all. So let's think about, you know, the Middle Age. You have people like, you know, writing things in a very complex and interesting way, and these were like a privileged class. But then we got, you know, writing. we got Gutenberg. We got, you know, the printing technology. And then we had the archives and all the paper and all the buildings built with stuff and the people in there. And then we got Google. So probably I think this might be radical, but it's the story of our species in which we typically move the meaning in different places. So what is meaningful? I don't know if you follow Nick Cave, the singer. He has a fantastic newsletter. You should subscribe to that. And we were talking, I think, about that. But then he got like these lyrics done with ChatGPT from a fan, and he was totally enraged. He said, "Okay, no, this is not good because there's no blood in that. There's no story. There's no suffering behind the art." But I'm an obsessive fan of Nick Cave, so I don't have anything to say about the music. But I think he's wrong. So there might be a point in which AI can be extremely good in producing emotions, and this is not something that you will devalue just because it's a machine. So this is something that we have to figure out as humans, and this is about also the digital worlds in the virtual worlds. Just because they are digital, you can have relations on Facebook. Now, why don't have any kind of interpersonal relations in a digital space? Even if you are like a rabbit as an avatar, and your partner there is an alien species. I don't know.
Can we talk a little bit about avatars, actually? So, I mean, now we have designers designing things, objects, spaces, etc. Are we going to have designers designing people? And can you explain a little bit how avatars work for those who don't know?
Yeah, I can start. When we think of digital worlds, if you want, we will have a broader universe, so the metaverse. Within the metaverse means a lot of things and include a lot of concepts from technological and so on. But if we zoom in, one of the characteristics is really virtual worlds. And the way we will experience, or we already experience virtual worlds are through avatars. So the easy way to think of avatars is really our manifestation and the identity in the virtual worlds. Now, I'm sure you all have at least one social profile. It could be LinkedIn, it could be Facebook, and so on. And we do have an image, so the body icon or the image of the profile. This is how we represent ourselves in 2D dimension, so on social media. The avatars is the translation, will represent our identity in virtual worlds. And it's a crucial component because we are adding the embodiment. So we are no more just an image, but we are already, and we will be even better in the future, we will have a real representation of ourselves with a huge implications in terms of identity, in terms of representation, in terms of really everything that is related to embodiment, even interoperability. Because right now, if we think of back to our 2D, we can have a different image on LinkedIn versus Instagram or Facebook, for example. In reality, if I'm like that right now, it's not because I'm acting. I will go to the restaurant right after this conversation. I will change my clothes. I will have my identity. I will transfer my identity in real life from this space in Triennale to another space, restaurants, for example. So between virtual worlds, the idea is really to have embodiment, so in avatars, and interoperability. So we can transfer ourselves from one virtual world to another one. And when I say ourselves, it's everything that represents ourselves, even our wallet, even our NFT, even our clothes, our closet, our digital closet.
Who will design
who
I am?
Yeah, there will be again. It's back to the co-creation and different players that are already actively building avatars and the ability to create avatars to other people that can come on board to really design that.
And let's talk about diversity, for example. When we talk about avatars, I mean, maybe somebody who doesn't like him or herself in the real world can be someone else there, or what?
No, this is the good part, and then there's the bad part. So because we have figured out a lot of the diversity things here, issues in the real world, well, we are trying to make progress. But then, of course, if you think about brands, then they are very careful right now in terms of diversity and inclusivity. Then the metaverse is, it's not the physical world. The laws of physics are not there, and you have to be very careful what kind of image you are going to project there. Let's say that you want to express yourself as a native indigenous avatar, that might hurt some sensibility somewhere. This is really a problem because one of the point of the metaverse will be this kind of, we call it, where we work in Nextatlas, we call it the intangible maximalism of the metaverse, which means that you get to express yourself in a very different way. So it's very free, it's very nice, but then you don't have ways to manage all the differences there. So this is a real problem. So when you get into the metaverse, if I'm a global brand, how do I represent myself? And then, of course, as I think that there are problems also in the technology. So as we were saying, we are not there in terms of making a perfect representation of ourselves. Not that there's a problem. Let's say I saw this Walmart kind of experiment in the metaverse, I think last year. And if you are in the Walmart space and you go there and you do your own grocery shopping and you look into the mirror in the metaverse and you see something that is you, but it's not really you because it's very imperfect. This is what, it's very uncanny. It's really uncanny valley, something. And you will have a meltdown. Less than perfect is not good. This is why you have to have all these creative shapes and all the alien things and all the otherworldly designs. These are very important anthropological, psychological topics that in designing this stuff, are the very foundation. So this is why I think there are people like Federica working on this kind of thing. So because people are deciding identities.
You're actually building the social, how do you say, interaction, social platforms, right?
Yes. And if you want, there are no right or wrong, but we can even run very quickly, just a quick experiment if you want, because I've been exposed to a lot of, I'm in marketing, so as you can imagine, focus group and right now. So very, very quickly, imagine that you are supposed to create your avatar, so your digital representation. And it's just, in a certain way for fun, and there is absolutely not right or wrong. So I'm curious to understand, and please raise your hand, if you want to, if you feel like, again, no wrong, no judgment here, but raise your hand if you want your avatars truly represent yourself. Who will want that? No right or wrong, no judgment here. You see? Thank you. So now imagine that you can create your avatars that will be the best possible representation that you have in mind. It can be a superhero, it can be, I don't know, someone, a real person that you admire, or even a fantasy person, who will you do that? Raise your hands. You see the diversity? It's a spectrum. You know, there is no right or wrong. I do have another question. Last one, I promise. Do you want to have just one avatar? Or do you want to have the ability to have 2, 3 avatars to really, so raise your hands if you feel like that's one, my avatars, and I only want to be myself always. Who wants to have multiple avatars to pick based on the occasion? You see, there is no right or wrong, and what emerged is really a diversity. So who say that, you know, we should do something instead of something else? And this is the beauty of what we have in front of us, and also back to the original point, the open mindset that we should have. Because then, now I ask a very specific question. So how do you want to represent? And here I don't need any hands. But at the same time, the other consideration is that, okay, I'm in a virtual world with myself as a myself, with myself as a superhero, okay, what we just... But when I'm interacting with another person, who do I want to interact with? Do I want to interact with Spider-Man, or do you want to interact with Luca? You see how the perspective is changing, because when it is about ourselves, we want to have the freedom to express ourselves, and we should have this freedom. But the metaverse or virtual worlds, in the virtual worlds, we will have co-presence. And co-presence is not only about ourselves, but is ourselves in combination with other people.
I also have a question for you then.
Yes.
What if I wanted my avatar to look like you?
That's another, why not, I would say.
I mean, if I want to look like Britney Spears or whatever, that's maybe a problem, right? Why did I say Britney Spears?
That's an anthropological question. But who say that is a no? I mean, it's just to say, back to the
property, no? There's no intellectual property.
I think this is not really figured out.
Yes.
So because that would be so there will be rules. Yes. So that you cannot really steal, let's say, the perfect identity of, just like you cannot impersonate people on social media and you get banned.
Yeah. So but with deep fake, everybody's doing it. Yeah,
this is a
right?
problem. So it's
who is going to regulate this, for example?
With laws.
With laws. Based on what? Exactly. You see the diversity. So it's and it's back to the consideration of dilemmas. It's not so easy to really, for sure we need regulation, but it's not necessarily so straightforward.
Okay, so going back to companies and design, how can a company wants to go in the metaverse? Let's say, I think there are quite a few representatives of company here tonight. A company wants to go in the metaverse. How should they go about that with all of this situation?
Well, I mean, this is a very important point in general, the idea of copyright or saving identities. Also in design, where now it's possible to create objects or experiences or ideas upon other designs. So who made it first? This is a very important question. There is not a unique answer. Probably NFT is a possible solution. Everybody knows what NFT means, which is nothing connected with NFT art, which is a
do you want
temporary.
To say maybe in one line, because you're very good at that, why NFTs are important in this field?
It's important because it's a way to certify an idea, a word, an image, a text, whatever, and it is written on the stone somehow. It's written on something that cannot be hacked, changed. So probably we were talking about convergence. Probably NFT is a technology which somehow will be a perfect match with this idea of copyright. It's a way to say, I made it first.
Yeah.
Will it be important? Yeah, probably. Mainly for companies that, sometimes they base their identity with something unique. It can be a pattern, can be, if we think about fashion, can be a particular feature or idea. So maybe there will be a convergence of different technologies in the same direction.
Let's talk a little bit about what happens in the metaverse. Now, most people go in the metaverse, they play games, right? Mm-hmm. So they have rewards. So we all know that gamification also when we use it for doing other things, I don't know, to learn a language with Duolingo or whatever, it's like a little game. Do you think the metaverse could be more populated? I mean, will the metaverse have a different type of reward system? Would it be maybe more emotional benefits rather than, I'm talking, the cozy gaming, for example, that are so hyped now. People that they don't win anything, they just feel relaxed. So what could the metaverse look like, and in which way design could help build these emotional benefits?
Is it for me? Okay.
Both,
okay.
Whoever.
No, I think so. So there are, larger trends here in the needs for, let's say, relaxing spaces and comfort and wellness and well-being. So I think that these will be there will be metaverses designed for that. So like the resort metaverse probably, and then so I think that there will be of course now we are starting with the easiest use cases, like gaming was there before any immersive reality. And as we progress, we will have most of the things that we value in the physical world also, mirrored there. So note that the digital wellness trend, so meaning having a way to feel better in life by means of digital technology, is already there. So there are plenty of meditation apps, plenty of other, digital tools to feel better, and so it's not that we will have big disruptions. It will be a continuum with bursts of acceleration, like in the last 3 weeks, but the things that we are seeing were already there in a different format. So the answer is yes.
But I mean, sorry. No. Did you want this? No, because I was wondering, a lot of stuff seems to be mimicking the real world in the metaverse. But do we really have to mimic the real world there, or do we have to try to build a completely new type of experience?
I believe that right now we are mimicking the real world. After all, to remain, despite everything, in our comfort zone, because we are already jumping into something that it's not real, it's already a step. So as a human nature, we want to really find comfort. So it's easier from a behavioral standpoint to really, as a first approach, try to find something that is familiar. But again, that's not the end point, it's more the starting point, is that, one of the first manifestations that we can see even now is that, okay, I'm in a virtual world, but for example, for office spaces, I still have, the desk and the screen within the metaverse. And that's a kind of to play with what is familiar, essentially. So my take is really to use that more as a starting point for the thinking, and from a design standpoint is really to overcome that, in terms of adoptions, to help people, bring along people, because we always need to balance from a behavioral standpoint.
If you could imagine what it could be like.
Yes, but that's the role of the designer, because back to the why we are playing game. I feel like that's actually one of the crucial part of my work. There is a what, so people right now play games. Okay, people, let's say teens, young adults, but playing game is an activity, is a what. What is really key is to understand why, because we can discover that especially in the virtual worlds, people, yes, are playing game as a mean to an end. And the end can be socialized with other people, meet other people. So it's important to really deep dive on the why, that ultimately are a human motivation. And when human motivation not are clear, but are kind of, there is a depth of understanding on that, that can be the starting point for a designer to design the what back again. So I think that the what and the why should be really, are intertwined, but should be very, very clear when we are talking about virtual worlds, that virtual worlds are the what, are a manifestation that most of the time are related to a why, to the human needs and ultimate motivations. And this is when, the creativity and the design, it's almost that the design has a role that is more upstream in designing what can be, a new thing or a new experience that will help people not overcome, but really fulfill the why and the needs.
Understanding the why is quite key, I suppose, yes. Right?
But with why, no, one of the best books.
It's also, the why is really important also because this virtual world, they seem to be, you're not just building a place or a tool, but you're actually building a new type of society, right? So what sort of skills should the people who work in this have? It's not just technical skills or programming or design. Do they have to be also, I don't know, philosophers, anthropologists, psychologists? What's the take on that?
Of course.
Yes. What are these
No, please.
For example, I always think that one of the most important, when you create a digital environment or experience or also objects, there are two important levels, the level of engagement and stimulating senses, maybe in a new way. For example, if I create a middle-aged man wearing Nike shoes, I'm speaking with a part of my brain. I'm activating a kind of engagement or reaction, and that's very important. Or I can overcome gravity, of course. I can create objects that don't fulfill the laws that we have in reality. So it's always important to stimulating senses in a new way, but also storytelling is very important. I think that the most important and interesting things that are happening nowadays, they are about a new kind of storytelling. And so I guess that and new kind of skills are important to speak a new language. It's not only about, of course, doing a mimic of reality. For example, the typical save icon on our computer. At the beginning, it was, the replacement of the real floppy disk, and now maybe you just see save. So everything is about describing things in a new way. Storytelling, to me, is one of the most important quality that we should put in a virtual experience in general.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that there will be like two different kind of skills that you will need to build the metaverse as a society, which are like the visionaries and the techies. So, and because, of course, and then design is a crucial part, because we said at the very beginning that the metaverse might be strictly linked to imagination, because we want to explore things that we cannot do in reality, for instance, like flying. So if you think about all the bad things that we build in our societies and our even physical spaces like cities, we really do, we want like to do the same things there. We really want the shop with, built exactly like the physical shop. We want like the bar with the actual bar there and the baristas. There's plenty of freedom. So I agree with Federica that you need familiarity when you do design, but then there's also the possibility of designing interesting and complex societies with economic systems. With Second Life was an experiment. I think that there's still people there, by the way.
Yes, there are.
they have the Linden things, the money. So, you know, it's funny now, but actually they built some kind of utopian thing. And I'm more interested in what we can build in this way. So without the idea of, you know, gentrify everything, even the digital space. So what is like the souk Marrakesh in the metaverse? That would be nice.
Okay, I think we're drawing to a close, so I wanted to ask you a lot of other things, but we didn't manage. Just maybe the last thing, and then we go on to the questions. What do you think will happen to the physical world when everything will be kind of controlled by AI? A very quick answer, though I know it's difficult, but...
Well, from again a perspective, designer perspective, you know, a couple of days ago I was doing a pinch to zoom on a newspaper. I was doing like that because, you know, I'm short-sighted and I couldn't. So probably adding some digital layers, some digital skins to objects will be something interesting. You know, we were discussing 1 year ago about that. Which is not just about putting screens, you know, on top of objects or spaces, but probably some way to integrate this.
Some having work for designers on that.
Yeah.
Fede?
Yeah, I mean, what you mentioned is it's absolutely relevant. I think we tend to yet underestimate the power of augmented reality. We are very focused, again, on what we know, because it's a reality, which is virtual reality. But one of the big bets is on augmented reality. So it's a layer, a digital layer on top of what is real, which is probably will be the best combination of the two words that I was describing. So the link between the physical and the digital. So that's one of the big elements that right now we tend to underestimate because the technology is not yet there, and will be a way to more organically interact with technology.
Luca, did you want to add something?
Yeah,
or?
so given that there's a lot of, I think, designers in the room, I think that there's a lot of change that will be in the shapes of the physical things that we will interact with. So more alien, otherworldly shapes because of the parametric and all the kind of interesting things that Arturo does. And also we will expect, I think, to have taste, let's say taste making, driven by AI. So we will change our tastes because AI is capable of building things and shapes that we haven't seen yet. And this is interesting, so we will dress in very weird ways. We'll have tables that are, you know, very different. So I really look forward to that.
It's a very exciting world ahead. Yeah. So now we leave the floor now to our guests here. If anybody has any questions, I believe that you must do, because you're all very clever people and very interested in the topic, right? Anyone? Oh.
What can we do if I will took all our work as a designers?
I didn't understand the question, sorry.
Like, what can we do if I will took all our work as a designers?
I don't think that this will happen. I think that, as I think Arturo was mentioning, there will be upskilling. So you will actually do a more interesting work than the AI is doing for you. Note that there's now this thing that is called prompt engineering, which means that you have to learn how to interact with the machine in natural language. And this is it's a craft. So you have to learn, you know, many words. It won't last because machine will be good also in prompt engineering. But I think that it's just moving, let's say, the bar higher. But it's just, and this is, you know, about education, and it's not about you or designers.
Anyone else? Down there.
Yeah, thank you, first of all, Federica, Luca, and Arturo, for your time and for sharing everything with us. My question is about new technologies such as ChatGPT. and how they will be applied to today tangible product, such as the robots or smart devices that we have at home, like Google Home or Alexa. And will it be well understood and accepted for all of us in the future or not? Thank you.
Oh, okay. So I think that then, of course, all these large language models, as they are called, they will plug into everything. So because, of course, think about a fridge. If I would do it tomorrow, that takes a snapshot of what you have in the fridge, and given that GPT-4 or ChatGPT is able to come up with a recipe, you just go to the fridge and you see on your screen, based on the ingredients that I can see in your fridge, you can do this, pokeball with these ingredients, or go and do your grocery shopping. So this is actually very fast, and it will be there, I think, in 2-3 years maximum.
And just to build on top of this example, I worked for Samsung for 5 years, and we experimented exactly that from an IoT standpoint, so from an Internet of Things standpoint. So creating all those use cases. So if you are familiar with Family Hub, the fridge with the cameras inside, and the power of AI can really enhance all of that. So it's a kind of an accelerator, and the level of accuracy will be much, much higher.
I will add that there will be less waste.
Yes.
Because typically you don't have ideas for your food. Probably the AI can come up with a nice recipe there.
And when we will have someone cooking for you, that will be very, very good as well.
And then when you have somebody cooking for you as a human, that will be a luxury experience.
I think so.
A bottura, yes. Anyone else?
Hello. In the point of view of each of you, which might be right now the next step to achieve with the help of the AI?
To achieve, sorry, I missed the last part. To achieve?
The next step to achieve with the use of the artificial intelligence.
Well, I guess one of the most important things that probably nobody is talking about is that we should be able to develop a kind of decision-making ability that we don't have in general. Because again, we spend so much time in the process, and there will be a kind of flip of the whole process of designing things or imagining on creative stuff. So decision-making, I mean, a set of skills like, language again, narrative, decision-making, they will be the most, and culture in general, they will be the most important thing to be developed. I mean, forget about technical skills, because they will be something replaced by AI and the next step of computer.
I think he wanted to know what the next step in AI will be, not the next steps that people should have to...
Okay, so, well...
Is that correct? Is that what you wanted to know?
I thought...
No. Did you want to know the next steps in AI, or the next skills that people will have to develop of AI?
Well, that's difficult to say. I mean, I see a replacement in every technical activity. For example, if you think about how it is already good in writing codes, for example. And I mean, it's very difficult for me because to say that, because I was, as we were saying before, in 2 or 3 weeks, everything changed. So I really don't know how to depict what is going to happen.
Yeah, it's very hard.
I mean, it's easier to think how to prepare ourselves to the change than trying to understand what is going to happen, probably.
Yeah, probably the flexibility is the biggest advice to all, because we need to be prepared for anything, right? We can't even imagine what's going to happen. Anyone else? Down there? Wow, lots of questions.
Wow, it's a big one. I think so. I think that
So as I said before, in terms of, if the scenario that I was mentioning between the divide, let's say between made by AI and made by humans, that there will be, a clear space in building things behind the AI, the infrastructure. So go there and work for an AI company. Otherwise, you might want to devote your career to take care of humans, like, assisting humans. Probably most of the less likely to be replaced very soon, because I don't know, again, you can predict, in 10, 15 years.
The next 3 weeks, let's say.
Exactly. Then I probably would be a nurse. Probably I would be someone who has to be very crucial for the life of people, the physical life.
Anyway, there is a nice book, a very important one, which is called The Average is Over by Tyler Cowen. It's a book about 2015, the discovering this topic, and is basically what you are saying, Luca. And this
is good.
Yeah, everything which is connected with something that cannot be replaced. So everything connected also with human feelings. And I was reading on that book that motivating people, for example, that will be a kind of new profession. Also because the book talks about the average is over. I mean, there will be a society fracture into important waves. Who wins and, and who wins and who loses. And so...
If I may add, so there's also the vision of a jobless society in the good sense. So this might happen.
This was one of my questions, actually, the new economy that can be created. No, I mean, I couldn't ask it because of the lack of time, but a new economy may be created, right, with the jobless society?
Yeah, so the point is that if AI does everything, what are we going to do? We have fun. So that's the point. So the analogy here is very clear. Think about the smartphone. So you before the smartphone, you had to keep all the numbers in your memory, but why? I can use my mind for more interesting tasks. So this is actually the small thing, but then when it will happen, on a large scale. The problem is governments and states will be so good in distribute wealth to everybody, corporates. Yes. So that's the problem. But then. But this is another.
We want to believe that.
Another talk.
We want to believe that it's going to be like that.
I think there is.
No, this is interesting. Go ahead.
It's not that different from previous kind of reply that there will be a phase of regulation. So we really need to understand how to really deal with a lot of, questions and dilemmas. For sure, we mentioned the NFT or everything that can, for example, authentically certify that you are that person, or, for example, that you have certain skills. So we really need to not reinvent necessarily, but to think on possible challenges, possible issues, and how to solve them. But this is not that different from what is happening in our real-life society. I hope so. For example, for sure, it's even before the metaverse, and, who say that, we should learn and we should go to school until we are around 20 in a society. We mentioned the acceleration. Our society is changing at speed and scale like never before, like anything before. So we are still approaching our educational system in the same way. Every time I'm telling, okay, my mom or my parents that I sign up for another class, they are looking at me and say, again, why you need to do that? Of course I need to do that, because the world is changing. So this idea of continuous learning is something that it should be already a reality, but it will be a crucial component of a society that is rapidly changing. And even the form of education, it's not just, what is the right form of education? We already know that we can experience education in a multi-device way. So it can be in real life, it can be digitally, it can be via video, it can be via podcast or audio. So, and maybe in the future, there will be, I dream of an opportunity to really go back and study history with a VR and set and really try to experience the pyramids in Egypt, for example. You know, there are opportunities. So we tend to think on the negative side because it's easier probably and because it speaks to our fears and all the challenges. But you know, there are also always opportunities to look at what's next. And really, I'm not able to tell you what necessarily, but that's the beauty of the opportunity, to have someone that is try to really transform a challenge into an opportunity.
It's like Doctor Who, traveling through time.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Anyone else? Sergio, do you?
I have a question.
Okay, the last one. Okay, come.
Last one.
So I wanted to ask you that which industry on a global level would be the first one to be fully automated or be fully endorsed with AI?
Very good question. I think it's not like a specific industry. Might be, you know, it's more like horizontal in a way. So I think most of the middle management tasks, like knowledge work, can be fully automated in a very, very quickly. So I think that, well, there are a lot of speculation about, for instance, logistics. Let's say, self-driving things, but then this was really hyped. Now we are very distant. So it's I don't have an answer. This is what my answer is. I don't have an answer. So.
But I guess that will probably, as you were saying, a cascade effect. And maybe, copywriting in this moment is very affected by AI. And so the way we learn new stuff is affected by that. And I mean, it's very difficult to understand how it will be integrated and accelerated. I'm sure that architecture will be the last one.
Definitely.
Because they're very stubborn. Architects
are very fully automation, full automation. I think that there's no place for real full automation. In the end, you might need some kind of supervision always. But
that's that.
No, again, it's very hard to predict.
So, thank you. It was so inspiring and so interesting that we can carry on for hours, I think. Some question that I would like to ask to the guest. I want to say thank you to everyone. Thank you to Arturo, thank you to Federica, thank you to Luca, thank you, Laura. And I would like to just to thank all of you in present and on the metaverse. And I would like also to invite you to the next event, the 18th of May, that we gonna have the space proximity with Ross Low-Grow, Paolo Nespoli, Saga Studio, and Space Popular. We're gonna speak about the humanization of the space travel.
Wow.
And so thanks. So many interesting tips. I would like to organize next year again. We can do no, it's too much, probably 1 month. And I want to invite all of you now that you are here physically. I don't know if we can do something for them, the people on the metaverse, to join us with a cocktail that is offered from Campari. And thank you again. See you in the next event.